Today, we're going to try something a little different. We're going to compare the fall of the Jedi Order with the teachings of Jedi Masters Simon Sinek and Jim Collins, authors of such great texts as The Infinite Game and Good to Great. I said it was going to be different. Yes, this is going to be a Star Wars episode. Still there? So let's travel to a long time ago in a galaxy far, far out. If you're still here, you know the rest. Let's crack on, my Padawan learners. As we know, the Jedi Order were a group of skilled warriors with a clear mission, maintaining peace and justice in the galaxy. They were once the most powerful force in the galaxy, far, far away, but their rigid adherence to their own beliefs and values caused them to become complacent and blind in the needs of the changing galaxy around them. Drunk on their own success in vanquishing their longtime foe and rival, the Sith, clouded their vision had become. I promise I won't do that again. They failed to see the Sith as a worthy rival, but instead an enemy to be vanquished. This inability to adapt to the changing environment was ultimately their own downfall. One of the most crucial lessons we can learn from the Jedi Order's downfall is the concept of the infinite game, as described by Simon Sinek in his book, aptly titled The Infinite Game. Sinek's teachings are about adapting and evolving, staying resilient in the face of challenges, and understanding that there is no winning in the traditional sense. Finite games, like a rugby match, have many rules and a time limit that both teams agree to before entering the pitch. This is rarely possible in business terms, as getting companies to agree to a detailed set of rules would be like herding cats. Instead, businesses must focus on creating long-term value for the customers, employees, and stakeholders, and constantly innovate to stay relevant in a consistently shifting landscape. In contrast, the Jedi were playing a finite game, where the goal was to defeat their enemies as quickly and decisively as possible, then flip a switch to Peacekeeper Jedi support mode. This was merely existing from day to day, without an overarching vision. As the younglings enter the Jedi Temple, they were taught the teachings of the Jedi, in terms of how they were to behave, and also the things that they would need to give up. But there was no clear shared vision about the direction that Jedi were going to in the future. A vision should be that point on the horizon that you never reached, but you know you're going in the right direction when you are, if that makes sense. So the Sith, on the other hand, were playing the infinite game, where their goal initially was to outlast their enemies, and, let's just say, to survive. This fundamental difference in philosophies led to the Jedi's inevitable defeat. Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, also provides us with a valuable insight into how businesses can succeed over the long term. Collins studied a number of companies that had gone from being good to great and identified several key factors that contributed to their success. One of these factors was the concept of the big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG. The Jedi once had a BHAG to bring peace and justice to the galaxy, but once they achieved this goal, they failed to replace it with another BHAG, or mission, as we use in business terms. So that's the important factor. We've got our vision, which is never ending, we're going in the right direction and it's always on the horizon, and then we have our mission, or as Jim Collins called it, BHAG, which are finite goals that we can measure whether we succeed or fail. But the most important thing is that once that goal's achieved, we swiftly replace it with another one that meets our vision, our core values of our organization. The Jedi failed to do that. They felt they won in a finite game. What they didn't realize was that they were in the wrong game. To apply Collins' model to our own businesses, we must identify our own big, hairy, audacious goal. What is the next goal that we are striving to achieve? How can we develop a long-term strategy to get there? And then how do we know when we've achieved it so we can replace it with another BHAG in the future? This allows us to create a culture of excellence and continuity, striving to improve, always keeping our BHAG in mind. Another critical lesson we can learn from the Jedi Order's downfall is the importance of seeing one's rivals as worthy competitors instead of enemies to be exterminated. The Jedi's lack of perspective caused them to become overconfident and underestimate their rivals. In contrast, the Sith saw the Jedi as a worthy adversary and continuously evolved and improved to match them and, when possible, better them. The beauty and brilliance of Order 66, the ultimate BHAG. It is important to clarify that Order 66 was a tragic event in the Star Wars universe and should not be celebrated or glorified in any way. However, we can still explore the strategic planning and execution behind the event and draw lessons from it that can be applied in the business world. Let's jump back into why Order 66 was perfect in a business sense, maybe not in a moral sense. Under the leadership of then Chancellor Palpatine, who became later Emperor Palpatine, the Sith orchestrated Order 66 by playing the infinite game. The Sith were patient, strategic, and always looking for an opportunity to gain an advantage on their rivals. They followed Darth Bane's rule of two, which mandated that there should only be two Sith at any given time, a master and an apprentice. This approach ensured that the Sith remained focused, committing to their ultimate BHAG of galactic domination. This business strategy can be compared to Jim Collins' fire bullets then cannonballs concept. This approach suggests that businesses should start out by experimenting with small, low-risk initiatives, firing bullets, before committing to larger, riskier endeavors. Cannonballs. By taking this approach, businesses can minimize their risk, increasing the chances of success. It needs patience, it needs dedication, and it needs some level of risk. But by reducing the risk initially until we have a better understanding of the landscape in front of us, we are more likely to achieve success. Had Palpatine grasped for power at the start of the Clone Wars before allowing everything to play out and both sides to exhaust themselves looking for an emperor to rise through the ashes, then he would have played his hand too early. He'd have shot his cannonball far too soon in the process, using up all his political capital, and it would be very unlikely that his plans would have succeeded. In the case of Order 66, Palpatine had been preparing this for decades. He had infiltrated the highest level of the Republic, he was the Chancellor, and the Jedi Order by bringing young, powerful Jedi Anakin Skywalker under his wing. He used every bit of influence he had to orchestrate things, but also had backup plans in case his initial plan had failed. He was playing the infinite game at that point. He managed to wrestle control of the clone army, and by setting the clone army of the Republic against the droid army of the Federation, he was able to weaken both sides, allowing a power vacuum for him to take control of. When the time was right, he gave the order, and the clone troopers turned on their Jedi commanders, having spent years throughout the war building mutual trust. This was a devastating, almost terminal blow to the Jedi Order, and paved way for the Sith to take control of the galaxy, through the guise of the Empire. So whilst this execution of Order 66 was morally questionable, it does provide us with an example of strategic planning and execution. The Sith were patient, played the infinite game, and were willing to take calculated risks to achieve their ultimate goal. These are important lessons that can be applied to the business world. So we shouldn't celebrate Order 66, apparently, but we can still learn important lessons from the Sith's approach to strategic planning and execution. By playing the infinite game, being patient and taking calculated risks, businesses can achieve their ultimate goals.
Next up, we are going to explore Jim Collins' genius with 1,000 followers concept, and how Emperor Palpatine's lack of faith in his team was eventually his undoing. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and wait with bated breath for episode 2 from Coruscant Business School.